Cans for Kids is taking a truckload to the, what's the place called? The recycling center?
Yeah.
Seems like you're used to doing that.
Well, I used to have to do this from Reno all the time.
Oh, wow.
Now we have our big truck.
Okay, now we're off to the recycling place to see what Cans for Kids did this year. We got cans, we got your plastics. My hero.
Beatrice Fettic Jones. And we are going to do an interview with her. Do you need to do a mic check, do you think? Or can you shout?
Oh, yes.
Well, my name is Sue Smith, and I'm going to try to ask some questions from our friend Mrs. Jones. May I call you B? Okay, remember to shout. Okay, first of all, when were you born? What's your birthday?
July the 21st.
1909, right? Right. Do you remember, and where were you born? Where were you born? Were you born in Carson Valley, in Mottsville? Where were you born?
I was born in Carson Valley, and my grandfather and them owned the Beatrice Center.
The Adams? The
Well, no, the ones that owns the bar and all.
Oh, okay, they owned the bar.
Store, and then I can always remember my grandmother had a big strawberry patch between the back of the bar and the other building and up to her house. So we always walked up that and went in the back door.
Okay, well, she did more than I asked. I asked where you were born, and she told me. My next question was, what memories do you have of Carson Valley? You told us some. Do you have others? Do you have a first thing you remember about being here? Not being born, I know that. Can you think of something you remember besides?
When we lived in Carson Valley?
Yeah.
Well, my mother's, her mother, they took up land right across the river, and they were up at Buckeye.
Buckeye. Okay, that's where I live.
And then we lived there, and I can remember as a little kid when my dad would go to cross that creek, and you get down and can see the cracks there, I always watched the cracks when I went across the bridge.
Did you count them or just watch them to make sure you didn't fall?
I was pretty small. And then every Sunday, then when I had to go to school, I went in Genoa. And my dad would, then we moved farther up in the valley. We bought a ranch from the Settlemyers, and it is, if you look towards Carson, you'd see it, see the house from that back there. And I'd have to go up to my grand because it was too far to travel to go to school. And by that time, they had moved the county seat to Minden. So we got the nice building for our school. And we'd go, the first and the fifth would line up, or fourth would line up over here, and the others in the eighth grade would line up over here. And then we'd go in, and one would take the bottom room, and the other one took the other room. And that's where we went to school. Then we had a nice place upstairs, and we used to have all kind of Christmas entertainments and different things up there. And then when I had to go to high school, another girl and I, we could, by that time, I could drive a Model T. We'd go down and then go over to Gardner, to go to school.
We have a picture of Bee in the school in Genoa, taken in 1922, so you might want to look at that when you are around here. So, well, you had a happy childhood, didn't you?
Yeah.
I bet. With all that. Do you want to comment on the
I was
change?
the only girl.
How many? The only girl, and so you got spoiled?
Yeah.
So,
And then my Aunt Jenny and Uncle Ed, the mother and two girls, then they came to live with Aunt Jenny and Uncle Ed, so we were door to door. This Friend's house, and then our house was next on the street there. And then my dad would bring me up to Genoa on Sunday. We'd have lunch or dinner, we called it, there, and then they'd leave me and go home. And then I'd stay at Grandma's and go to school all week. And then Friday night, Friday afternoon, he'd come and get me. And then it would be the same routine. You come back and stay a week and you can go home.
I know there is a lot in between, and maybe we'll come back to that later, but I know that you worked at Aladdin's shop, the florist shop.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did that. My husband was working in the post office in Gardnerville, and when he'd come in, I wouldn't want to stay out the ranch. We were doing much of that, just sitting there. And so then I'd come in, and then I'd go to work with Esther in the farm shop. And I remember the first piece that I made was for an Indian man that he wanted it to put on the grave after it's closed. So it was about this long and was all covered with greens on the top and around and this nice. and I wrapped it in paper, and I packed it out and gave it to him. He got up in the truck, and I lifted it up to him. He turned around and threw it in these toolboxes in the door.
Oh, that was a good story. After that, though, I know you were very important in retired senior volunteer program. In fact, when I first moved here 7 years ago, Beatrice Fettic Jones was on my case about my volunteer hours and make sure that I got them right. Do you want to talk about RSVP?
Senior volunteer. Yeah, volunteer. We signed the place that was going to use it, and then they would go there and do everything they were supposed to, and then I had to get the hours every month from them and publish them and give back to them. And some of them got paid, and some of them were doing it for nothing.
Some of us were.
We had a lot of people that did that time.
In fact, the Historical Society, the two museums were under that program, weren't they? It no longer exists, does it? The RSVP doesn't exist anymore, but we worked hard, and you really worked hard. I remember being at a reception where you were honored. I think you must have been about 95, maybe? Do you remember a big reception where you were honored at Carson Valley Inn? Do you remember? Were you thrilled? She's understating it. It was wonderful, and she was revered for doing what she did for this. What else do you have to tell us? Do you have any comments about the difference 100 years ago, or when you remember it, and now? Can you think of some different changes that you are most surprised about?
Oh, I think that the way people can travel and the way they can get around and people go into different countries and like when we go to Carson, my grandmother had to go to Carson to see Uncle George and his family every week when I got so I could drive the old Ford. We'd have to go down and go in front of the Indian school, and then you got there, and they had a big house that their family members had owned, and we could go there. And then they give my grandmother eggs to go home, and we'd have to go that side of the road, and that'd be kind of bumpy out there. And one day I was mad I saw it on a picture. I hit one of those boats and the legs.
I think you were kind of a mischievous person, were you? Yeah, look at that laugh.
And then I had I had 3 brothers. And they were Beatrice and I.
Oh boy.
And then when my youngest brother, when he was, I can remember his big old blue baby buggy. And when I'd want to go to the neighbors to play, I'd put him in the baby buggy and push him out to her. It was quite a little ways. And then give him something to play with, and he'd stand and play, and we'd do our thing.
You're a pretty good babysitter, huh? Yeah. Can you think of anything else else that we should know about?
Well, I traveled a lot.
You did?
Yeah. I got the Golden Ages, and I've been all over the United States. I've been all over Canada. I've been all over Europe. And you name it, I've been there.
Do you remember the first big trip you took? When did you go to these places? Were they when you were older, or were you fairly young when you started to travel?
Well,
I mean, what's young? I know.
and what's I don't know.
Well, that's fine. And we were really happy. Do you have? What was your favorite? Carson Valley. No, like.
Oh, I'll tell you, we used to have to go after we got to grammar school. Then we had to go over to Carson Valley and play house. And the other girl and I go, and Mr. Grimley took us sometimes to tell me what kind he used to go. And then I drove and we had on a key, and we'd go over and go to school, and then we'd go back to jail and then we'd race. Then we'd race the boys.
Oh boy, and I bet you won, did you?
Down the road and up the hill.
Are you getting tired of talking? Well, we're going to do your story about Pioneer Lady, about your great-grandmother, and we're going to do that now. And you can watch us, because we talk about your dad, because she interviewed them on a tape recorder and then transcribed them, and that probably was quite a big job. That was in 1962, as I understand it. And we also have your book, The Motts of Mottsville. So we have those for sale.
And then another thing, I never helped much in the house. I was always out with my dad.
Oh, kind of a tomboy.
Well, and I wasn't too old, and I drove the 2 horses in one of those things that they put the fork down into the wagon, and then you tell the horses you drive the horse to the head, pull it up, and then they swing it, the thing will swing it over when the back gets up pretty good, and then the man up top is all dimpled, and they pull the string down on the truck. So the wagon, we didn't have trucks, we had wagons and horses. And then we drive, and I'd have to drive the thing so that it would swing over, and then back up and let the fork go down on the wagon. So I was always a tomboy. I was always out with my dad.
Well, we're going to talk about some things that happened in those days, and we're going to put you right here, and we're going to do our play, and then maybe we can ask some questions afterward too. You want? Does she need a walker, or can we just do it this way? Can you do it that way?
I can stand up.
Me, I know how stubborn you are.
And if it's really nice that I stand up on them, I can.
Okay, here you go. I'll take your other hand.
You're going to be next to Charlotte. Okay.
There you go. Here again. We kind of had a few things done, and then we will begin with our show. Okay, here we go. Fastest set change in the West. Okay, this is called Portrait of a Pioneer Lady by Grace Dangberg and Beatrice Fettic Jones, who you've just seen. This is a reading theater transcribed conversation between 88-year-old Georgie Beating Dangberg, who was mother of Grace Dangberg, and Jean Fettic. I'm Gracie. and this is Georgie, and this is Jean Fettic, and that's your father, Jean Fettic. Right. Eugene, yeah, that's right. The pioneer lady referred to is Ellen Mott Taylor, and that's law. An early teacher in Mottsville, and the first white woman to live in Nevada. She was married to Israel Mott. It is said that the Mormon train on which she arrived from Salt Lake City, they both, was led by Kit Carson. Their daughter, Louisa Beatrice, who in this play is called Aunt Beta, was the first female born in Nevada. Georgie Beating was a teacher in the Mottsville School and boarded at the Mott Taylor home in the 1890s. Mr. Fettic was her student. Mrs. Jones recorded and transcribed this conversation in 1962. Mrs. Jones is the great-granddaughter of Eliza Mott Taylor. She will celebrate her 100th birthday this summer, July 21st, and copies of the manuscript are available upstairs in the bookstore. Take it away, Mrs. Jones. Please record.
My first acquaintance with your grandmother, Mrs. Mott Taylor, was on a Sunday evening in September of 1892. I had to go over to open the school on Monday morning. My husband-to-be said he would take me, and we drove from Gardnerville to Mottsville. I had been past the house, but I'd never been in it. We had never met your grandmother nor your Uncle George, who lived with her. So we got out. And do you remember how high those trees and how much shrubbery there was around that house? It was back in the shrubbery, and we couldn't see. It was dark. So we got out, and we went through the gate into the yard, and the shrubbery was very high. We walked through it up to the front door. It was the parlor door.
Now, the parlor was first.
The parlor was first. And your Uncle George came through the door with a candle in his hand. We went through the parlor, and I remember that so distinctly. There was an old square piano in there. Do you know whatever became of that?
Aunt Beta, she was the first white girl born in the Carson Valley. She got the piano when they sold the ranch. She took it into Genoa, and it was in that old drugstore for years.
I wonder where that piano is now.
I wouldn't know. Grandma sold it to an antique dealer over in Placerville, I think. Someone had made a piece to hold the foot pedal. It had been broken off. They brought the piano across the plains with them.
So he took us through to the living room and dining room. That was all one room. And we had to go through one bedroom to get there. That was your grandmother's bedroom.
Yes, my grandmother's, wasn't it?
Yes, and I had the bedroom right off from her room. It was one step down.
One step down and set back on the side.
Yes, there was a lean-to on that side. That was my room. Well, when we got there, there was the table, and it was the dining table, and they were playing cards.
Oh, yes, they played cards every night.
Well, it was Sunday night, And that was something my mother never permitted us to do, to play cards on a Sunday. So my husband-to-be said that he saw my jaw drop in amazement. Anyhow, it looked lonely because they were sitting there, each at the table with this deck of cards, and each one of them had a candle. He held a candle, and she held a candle so they could see the cards. Now, your grandmother always sat in a chair with a rawhide bottom and a slat back. Anyhow, she always sat like that. And they sat there and talked, and we visited, and we spent the whole evening. And that was my first night there. The next morning, your Uncle George took me to school. He did that always in stormy weather. In good weather, I walked. Now, let you tell what you have to say about that. You told me something about that once before.
You walked too fast for me. I had to trot along just to keep up.
You were 12 years old. You must have been in the 4th grade.
13. I was 13 in February.
You were 12 when I got there. Before that evening was over, your grandmother got out her pipe. It was a corncob pipe, and it had a long stem. I was going to tell how she sat in the chair and smoked. Anyhow, of course, that struck me as kind of funny. I had seen one woman smoke before. She was a friend of my parents and an elderly lady, too, and she smoked a pipe. But your grandmother was sitting in that rawhide chair with the slat back, and her chair was always in that corner by the stove. You remember that? And of course, if you know anything about pipe smokers, they always expectorate a great deal. And she didn't have a cuspidor. She did not, for which I was most grateful. They are the most unsanitary things I have ever heard of. But anyway, she had a small box filled with sand, and she changed that every day. She would sit in that chair, put her feet up on the rungs.
She'd lean back against the wall and stick her heels up here in the rung in front.
That's right. Well, she didn't lean back always because she would put her feet up.
And have that pipe hanging down here in her mouth.
She sat like that, and she did lean back some.
We had 2 slats, remember? Mm-hmm. Nailed against the wall for the back. One for the chair back and the other for her head.
Well, and she always spent her evenings like that in that chair with her feet up like that.
Well, you know, they say that many women in the South smoke cigars and pipes.
I never saw your grandmother smoke a cigar.
She never did at the ranch, but I've seen her smoke with my father in the house. Nanny, you know, that's what us grandchildren call her. She always had dinner with us when she came to Genoa. Well, after my dad got through the store, he'd come up and eat, and then she'd say, "When you go down, bring me up a cigar, will you?" He'd come up and bring a cigar, and she would smoke it.
Well, then I want to tell how she happened to smoke. Do you know why?
She said she used to have a toothache, and that started her.
It was the only thing that would relieve her toothache. And if she had to have anything done to her teeth, she had to go to Placerville for it. So she got relief from smoking that pipe. And she smoked it until her dying day, I guess, didn't she? She was never obnoxious with it. It was a real picture to see her sitting in that chair, smoking and listening to the interesting things she had to tell us.
Well, you know, Uncle George told me that my grandfather, Israel Mott, well, he fell into a hay press and was killed. He died in 1863. Then Nanny married Mr. Taylor in November of 1864. He died in 1890. He liked to fish and hunt. He used to take Charlie, Aunt Vita's boy, and me up to Hope Valley to hunt. One fall, Nanny and Clara and Mr. Taylor and I went around the lake in a rowboat hunting along the shore. Taylor Creek in Tahoe Valley is named for him.
Well, Jean, if we're going to describe your nanny, we'd have to go on to tell about her. How she helped take care of the stock, wouldn't we?
Oh, yeah. She'd get up and milk cows, put on her hat, big coat, pair of boots, wrap her feet up in barley sacks, to get out and milk 6 or 7 cows, and then she'd come back in the house and cook breakfast.
And we had a wonderful breakfast always.
Wade out there in the snow that deep, she didn't care.
Yes, and she wasn't like the modern young woman. She never wore trousers. She always wore a skirt and boots. And in the stormy weather, she got the wagon and drove the team to do the feeding.
Oh, yeah. She'd done a lot of hard work.
And then, right back of the house, there was the dairy, the milk house. Wasn't that what they called it? And wasn't that built over the stream?
They used to run water, through the churn with a water wheel.
Yes.
And then it would run down a ditch, and then it would run down a flume, and then the flume was raised, and they had a hole dug down in there and had a deep ditch from there, and then they turned the water from the flume and had a paddle wheel.
Yes.
And it turned the churn for them. They used to sharpen sickles with it, too.
Well, then she made butter all the time.
Oh, yeah. She made butter all the time.
And you tell what you know about the butter.
Boy, she used to make lots of butter. Put lots of it in rolls and take it to the store. And a lot of it she packed down in firkins, those kegs. And then in the summertime, after Warren, now that's Nanny Israel's firstborn, Warren, he would haul it up to Glenbrook, and they used it all up there. She churned every other day, I guess. She had a great big old square churn in summertime.
She'd have to. To keep it, they put it in the firkins and they put brine on it.
Oh, yes. And she made cheese. She would take the morning milk. Pete Van Sickle, he always gave her a calf stomach when she wanted to make cheese. This went into the milk. It was heated and coloring was added. Then she took the curd, put it in a frame, and it was put under pressure, to get the whey out. And then she put it away to age. Oh, was it good. It would be as big around as a big milk pan. In the winter, they didn't milk many cows. She would sit there by the stove and churn that way. She had one churn about that high, I guess. She churned butter in there to beat the band. You should have seen all the work she did. Early in the morning and late at night. Milked the cows at night.
Yes.
She did a lot of work in the summertime, of course. I guess she washed about 60 milk pans in the morning, yeah. Churned all the butter.
Yes.
Skim all that milk, make butter, and scrub the floors in the kitchen. Remember, they all had board floors. Nothing on them.
Really rough boards.
They weren't even with the rest of the floor. The parlor had a carpet on it, and it was woven of 2 colors. The cellar had a dirt floor. Milk, butter, cheese kept in there.
Oh my, she did so much in a day.
Well, they didn't go to town every day either. They only went once a week.
Did she give you pie every day?
Almost. She used to tell about Mrs. Brockles. You know Frank Brockles' mother, old lady Brockles? She was English, and she used to always call pie poi. And she used to tell how she used to come down to know if she could have a bit of poi. And she had good poi always, too. Apple, mince, squash.
Well, did Nanny have a garden, like a vegetable garden?
Oh, yeah. They were always raising all the vegetables.
And did you take care of the chickens?
No, not very much.
Yes, I think Nanny did that.
Yeah, they run all over the ranch. They didn't take care of them like we do now. They just let them run.
Well, she used to braid straw hats for you too, didn't she? Make your hats?
She'd buy the straw. Then she'd wet it and braid it 3 braid flat. She'd get a whole string of it. Then she'd start at the top and braid it. Make straw hats for Charlie Lupton and me. You remember Charlie, don't you?
Yes, he was another grandson.
Yes, he was Aunt Beatrice's boy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and Clara was his sister.
I will never forget one time. Remember that room over that way? George used to sleep in it?
Yes.
No, the old room, I think was there. That was before George built the other one. It used to stand on that side. They used to call it Hope Valley all the time. I think they hauled it down from Hope Valley and put it there. I think Mary Mott, that's another teacher who was Squire Mott's daughter. Okay, I think Mary Mott used to sleep out in there. They had a stove in it, I remember. And then, after George came, he moved it around to that end and made it level with the floor. The old bedroom used to be there. I think it was about 2 steps down. The door was shut. I remember it had little latches on it. Charlie Lupton, remember that's Aunt Beatrice's boy, he got a chair. I'll never forget that. He got a chair up there, and he leaned it back against the door, and pretty soon the door flew open, and he went down the 2 steps backwards, chair and all.
Those little latches you speak of, everybody had those. They didn't have locks on doors like they do now.
No. Oh, they had a little latch.
But just a little latch. You raised it with your thumb.
You put a little weight on there, though. Door flew open and opened him that way, and he went just right on down, chair and all.
Well, it was 1 step down to my room, and on the other side of the house. It was a step down into the kitchen. Your grandmother went up and down every time she went into the kitchen.
Can you remember anything about the breakfast that you had?
We had the best in the world, always.
Ham and eggs?
Nearly everything. Hot bread, nearly always. I don't remember much toast. I think she made hot biscuits every morning, or hot cakes. And she made the most delicious rice pudding I ever tasted. Do you remember that rice pudding?
Yes, oh yeah. When we were kids, old man Taylor, that was Nana's second husband, he was still alive. Every Sunday night, we always had dinner at night. She would make a great big milk pan full of that corn.
Mush?
Mush, yeah.
That's all we'd have for supper. That and milk.
Always hated it when Sunday night came. I never liked it anyhow, and that's all we had.
That was an early day dish. My mother used to make that. And we children were always delighted when we were going to have cornmeal mush for supper.
I never did like it much. But I had to sit there and eat it or go hungry.
Well, I was very fond of it. My mother always made enough so she could pour it out and then slice it and roll it in flour and fry it for breakfast the next day. Your grandmother did that too.
Well, then, what would you have for lunch? Or did you take your lunch to school?
We took our lunch to school. Oh, we had everything that anyone could want. Sandwiches, poi, and everything you can think of. And plenty to eat always, and good food.
And then what time would you have dinner?
Oh, I think we had our evening meal. We called it supper. We didn't call it dinner. About 6 o'clock, don't you remember?
Oh, yeah.
She said that the reason she had burned candles so long was that Mr. Taylor was afraid of a kerosene lamp.
He was always scared of lamps. He wouldn't allow a lamp in the house.
I used to sit there with a candle to do my schoolwork in the evenings and try to read as they did. I'd read and hold my candle. Each one of us had a candle around the table.
Oh, yeah, if you wanted to go from one room to another, you had to pack a candle around.
Yes, and then she got a lamp. And I remember that little lamp so well. It had a white glass shade on it.
Well, what game of cards did you play? Like casino?
Well, we played casino. Then she taught me how to play euchre. I don't know. She taught me a lot of games I had to play with her.
I never played anything but casino with her.
Boy, my grandmother sure liked to play cards.
Oh, yes.
When I was little, she'd get me playing. I'd get so sleepy I couldn't tell one card from the other.
But did you say that you stayed with her most of the time?
Oh, yeah. I stayed with her a long time.
You were there nearly all the time I was there, I think. And were you born in that old house?
Yeah. My mother and father had the hotel at Sheridan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I imagine that grandmother took care of father's mother because she was a midwife. She also helped lay out the dead and took in sick people to care for.
The first house, blacksmith shop, store, and school were built where the Mottsville Cemetery is today. Then the Motts divided their property. My grandfather and mother took the store building and moved it to where the present Hugh Hanson Ranch is.
Yes, I know. I was over at the house. The older people kept the house at the cemetery.
Well, was Nanny of the Mormon faith?
No, she was not. She told me a great deal about the Mormon settlers, though, at one time, and she did tell me about Joseph Smith, who was a prophet in the Mormon church. One of the elders of the Mormon church was visiting at Dave Park's. I was invited over to the Parks for dinner to spend the night. And this elder proceeded to tell me all about the church and what a wonderful man Joseph Smith was.
Well, did she tell you about the first school in the state of Nevada with classes being held in the kitchen and taught by Nanny or a Mrs. Allen until the schoolroom was built?
Yeah, but you didn't get much wages in those years.
No, indeed you didn't. But your grandmother didn't charge much for room and board either.
No. $16 a month, board and room.
She usually charged 20, but she told me that it was 16 because I went home every Friday night.
Oh, you always help wash and dry dishes and everything. You wash dishes every night, I know that.
Well, you didn't have to do it, did you?
Well, it was an interesting thing to do. It was such a short time, only 20 days. She charged $1. No, it wasn't that much because it was only $16 a month. And I had a nice room.
Wasn't that room pretty cold in the winter?
Oh, it was cold, but I didn't mind.
It had a low roof. I mean, it wasn't very high.
And it really was cold. I think I did have my first pair of bed slippers. They were knit. My feet would get so cold, I slept with those on. I always put those on just when I put on my night dress. Well, as I started to tell you, I couldn't draw my money because I wasn't of age. So I went without my salary that first month. And then on the 14th of December, I turned 18. I had a birthday. And then I got my pay. I got $40 a month. And I paid 16 of it for board. So I did pretty well with my salary. And your grandmother was responsible for that. At her funeral, a close friend said that she was a very, very fine woman. She did all the good she could in every way she could, whenever and to whomever she could.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mrs. Jones, for B? Thank you for giving us this book so that we have so much history from your family in our archives now. And thanks to Mike Smith for recording it so that we have these. Thank you so much for coming. This has been wonderful. Carol, you want your people to wait, or do you want the mad crowd?
Well, everybody's going to spread out, so we'll just work our way out.
Okay. Thanks to our cast.
That's only because you know. The taxman's taken all my dough, left me in the stately home, blazing on a sunny cloud. summertime, in the summertime. Save me, save me, save me from this squeeze. I got a big fat mama trying to break me. 'Cause I love to live so pleasantly, live this life of luxury, blazing on a sunny afternoon. In the summertime, in the summertime, in the summertime. Okay, we're ready.
Hey, that fine, so are we. Eddie was here.
Living on sponge cake, watching the sun bake. All of us tourists are covered with oil, strumming my six string on my front porch swing. Smell of the shelter that's beginning to boil. Wasted away again in Margaritaville, searching for my lost shaker of salt. Some people claim that there's a woman to blame, but I know it's nobody's fault. Don't know the reason I stayed here all season. Nothing to show but this brand new tattoo. But it's a real beauty, a Mexican cutie. How they got here, I haven't a clue. Wasted away again in Margaritaville, searching for my lost shaker of salt. Some people claim that there's a woman to blame, but I know it's the bartender's fault. Wasted away again in Margaritaville, searching for my lost shaker of salt. Some people claim that there's a woman to blame, but I know nobody's fault. Blew out my flip-flop, I stepped on a pop-top, I cut my heel, had to cruise on back home. But there's booze in the blender, and soon it will render. a concoction that helps me hang on. Wasted away again in Margaritaville, searching for my lost shaker installed. Some people claim that there's a woman to blame, but I know it's the bartender's fault. Hang on. Some people claim that there's a woman to blame, but I know it's my own damn fault. All right.
Yes, it is.
We're at Sure Heaven filming Lots of Love. Been growing my hair for an extremely long time to donate it to some kid because my girlfriend had cancer as a child, and she wore wigs for a lot of years until I met her and said, don't wear any more wigs. But with my beautiful locks of hair, I thought, what the hey, I'll grow my hair and donate it to a kid like Deborah. And that's what we're doing. Young Terry Moore here has decided to be my instructor on getting rid of this hair and donating it to a young kid. That's perfect.
The major part of it for the Lots of Love, we're going to contribute this hair right here.
Excellent.
Okay, and then I'm just going to cut the beard up and give him a nice clean look.
This is Michael Smith. We have just finished donating my hair to Lots of Love. And Terry Moore says I look like a new person, which I feel lighter. And I certainly hope this can be turned into a wig for a kid and that more people will come and donate their hair as well. This is Michael Smith reporting from Share Heaven in Gardnerville. Thank you. We got cans. We got your plastics. My hero.